we'll probably get started. Well, welcome everyone to Mentor Minnesota's Lunch and Learn, spotlighting STEM. I know October has been a very busy month for STEM, as really across the country programs and program connected people to STEM have really been trying to uplift it. And we're so excited today to be joined by Dr. Michael Wolf. He's both the founder and executive director of the Minnesota STEM Partnership. Happy all of you are here. A little bit of agenda, a run through what today will look like. We want to start from a good place. We also want to, and with that, getting to know you. Also kind of a little bit of an introduction to Mentor Minnesota for those of you that are not as familiar with us. We'd also like to provide you with some resources and sort of this high level foundational knowledge with our STEM supplement and some other resources that we utilize from the National Mentoring Resource Center. And then, as I mentioned, we want to really spotlight a STEM program champion from the Minnesota STEM Partnership, Dr. Michael Wolf. And then there'll be some time at the end for questions and answers. But as we go, this is really, we want it to be an engaging and informal space for all of you. So as we go through the slides today, and as Dr. Wolf is sharing, if you have questions, feel free to go ahead and share them really in the chat as we go. With that, we'd like to start from a good place, as I mentioned, and that's really getting to know you. So if you'd be so kind to share in the chat your name, pronoun, and then your organization, agency, or program that you're joining us here today. And then a question for you. When you think of STEM, what comes to mind? So that could be a word, an experience, or just really overall, maybe some of the background knowledge that you have. But when you think of STEM, what comes to mind? So you can go ahead and share that in the chat, because again, we would really love to get to know you a little better. And as we're getting to know you, we'd also like to introduce ourselves. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Sarah and Allie both.
Hi folks, Sarah Schaefer, she, her, I'm the executive director at Mentor Minnesota. I'm really excited that you're all here because STEM is something we're trying to focus on more as an agency. I know when I think of STEM, I think of curiosity, but increasingly I've been thinking about work and workplace retention and creating opportunities for young people in new and exciting ways. So I'm really excited that you're here today. And I'm going to pass it on to our soon to no longer be program coordinator for Vista, but maybe just our straight up program manager, Allie.
Hello, I'm Allie Ervig, she, her. And I kind of just think of those science words, but I'm definitely excited to learn more about it in this session. I'll send it back to Emily.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah and Allie. And again, yes, we're so excited that Allie hopefully is going to be staying on with us a little bit longer. Well, really a whole lot longer is my hope. I'm Emily Guerra. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the program director here at Mentor Minnesota. Before this work, I worked for almost 2 decades in education. And I know we're here to talk about STEM and with that being math, but I'd prefer you not to do the math on, what 2 decades would mean for my age. But really, in all of those years, I think advocating for young people in any capacity has been my favorite thing to do. So I'm fortunate enough to continue to advocate for youth and young people through programming and providing support that we do here in Mentor Minnesota. When it comes to STEM, to be honest, the first thing that came to mind is probably Bill Nye. And Bill Nye did amazing things for kind of creating a platform for making STEM seem fun. But I think more importantly, what stands out to me is my daughter right now, who has found a new interest and love for not just STEM, but really STEAM, and how she's incorporating her love of art and using it to learn and engage a little bit more in her IT classes. So that also makes me really hopeful and excited that we're coming together at the table today. As I mentioned, we are joined today by a special guest, Dr. Michael Wolf, who's both the founder and executive director of the Minnesota STEM Partnership. And I'm so excited to introduce him to all of you here shortly. But before I do that and hand the mic over to Dr. Wolf, I really want to share just a little bit for folks that are new on this call about Mentor Minnesota, who we are, our pillars of work, and really what is our mission, or what do we do? So with that, these are our pillars of work. And I really feel like our main purpose is that we're here for you. We really want to support you, the adults. We believe in holistic youth development, and that we really want to elevate quality. We want to connect people to each other as we are here today, and expand the movement, as well as really influencing systems. As I mentioned, advocating for young people is so important to me and the Mentor Minnesota team. So we really feel that by providing and supporting all of you, we can really help to infuse the mentoring movement. These are some of our evidence-based practices and innovations that we use, and I won't be diving into any of these in detail. However, the takeaway here is really that we believe in empirical research. We find that, it's really important to use evidence-based best practices as our guide as we're providing the support and resources. Specifically, we do rely on our elements of effective practices for mentoring. And there is the STEM supplement, which you can see here, and I'm going to make sure that that will be in your toolbox, if you will, after today, that you'll be able to go ahead and take that with you. So one of these, this tool of our STEM mentoring supplement is a supplement to the elements of effective practice, as I mentioned. And we really want to just touch on some high level takeaways from the STEM supplement for all of you here today. So in looking at this, I'm curious. So in STEM mentoring models, youth are more likely to report. And so there's, in looking at this graphic, I'll give you just a moment, but I'm curious, what would maybe stand out to you, or what are you surprised by in looking at this? And you can go ahead and either unmute yourself, or you can share it in the chat.
So I see increasing STEM identity, and I agree. So the document that I linked into the chat, which I know Emily's going to send out later, the elements of effective practice STEM supplement, really walks through best practice in integrating STEM into mentoring relationships. And Michael, that evidence came through so strongly. That was one of the biggest outcomes that researchers found, was that having a mentor that works with a young person in STEMs, that could be someone that comes in and shares their work, or talks about their work, or does STEM activities with them, is much more likely to have a STEM identity, and therefore much more likely to pursue a STEM career later, because they feel like they fit in. So I just wanted to highlight that. That's great.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Michael. Data correlates with some longitudinal data we see with our programs. Yeah. And really, and looking, there's so many of them. And I think really the benefits of young people engaging in STEM are positive. They, for me, I really noticed that not only the STEM skills and knowledge, or an increased performance in STEM subjects in school, so whether that be science or math or technology, but then something that really stood out to me as well, and that's the STEM self-efficacy and or confidence. As I shared, I think with my daughter, being a young person, and she felt like she really didn't have the brain power, she often said, to do something with STEM. But I think, and now that she's engaging with a STEM program, she's really, gaining that self-efficacy and that confidence that that she can do it. So I think for young people, I love to see how the the outcomes of these STEM mentoring models really highlights the importance of our conversation here today. So I wanted to share that out. And so why, having STEM focused mentoring, why is it needed? Well, in looking at that, we pulled a few items that stood out to us, and it's, the why being underrepresented identities more likely to face personal performance doubts that lead to attrition, kind of that imposter syndrome, if you will, feeling like they maybe don't fit in and wanting to change that. Underrepresented identities are more likely to have negative feelings about their workplaces. Minnesota has the lowest achievement rates for students of color. And middle skills and STEM careers are most in demand right now nationally. So not just here in Minnesota, but really across the United States and abroad. So I think the why, it's important, I think, to kind of stop and pause on that and recognize that this work is so important. And STEM focused mentoring, we kind of shared out a few of those of why it's working and things, the outcomes that we're seeing. But, with that, we also see equal focus on community and skill acquisition and how that creates that sense of belonging, really feeling like they aren't, having that imposter syndrome or attrition where they really feel like they do belong. And underrepresented identities, so women, BIPOC, the queer community, getting more opportunities to see themselves as experts, sort of that mentality of if you see it, you can be it, right? And seeing themselves as scientists and that, they're welcomed at the table. And then really building that mentor, that employee advocates for change in the workplace norms. So really, what are these workplaces that might be STEM based and focused? What do they look like? And really trying to build and advocate for that to be a very inclusive and interesting and inviting place for young people. So with that, I'm happy to kind of give my voice a little bit of a rest. I'm really excited to be introducing all of you to Dr. Michael Wolf. Again, as I mentioned, he's the executive director and founder really of the Minnesota STEM Partnership. So Dr. Wolf is a passionate technology leader that found and secured their purpose, giving back to urban and BIPOC communities, providing STEAM education to students, seeking better options and opportunities in education and careers. Dr. Wolf is also a very humble person and mentions being just one human doing what he can to do with a group of incredible, passionate volunteers. Dr. Wolf has experience in information technology. He also has a plethora of other financial services experience, business, and really, I think his capacity when it comes to talking about this would go on for a long time. Most recently, Dr. Wolf served Prudential Individual Life Insurance in many architectural capacities, including open source, collaboration, modeling tools, support, analysis for suites such as Microsoft Office, SharePoint, etc. So, but I think what I wanted to mention before I hand the mic over to you, Dr. Wolf, is that I really appreciated his career goal being to leverage deep experience to create a high-performing team dedicated to creating excellence, delivering business IT needs. So with that, please welcome Dr. Wolf.
Well, thank you, Emily, and everyone. Thank you for coming today. I'm very excited to participate in this. And I'm honored, quite honestly. And when you said I'm a humble person, obviously none of you have talked to my wife. So this is probably a good thing. But I am very motivated. I'm a retired person, if you will, that very lucky in a lifespan to be able to find my purpose. Done a lot of things, had some incredible experiences, worked in corporate America, and a benefactor of true mentor relationships. I'm going to give you all, because I'm going to manage time. And Cheryl, I think it may be the only one here that is actually knows me. I could talk for the entire hour. So I am a Toastmaster and I will govern my time and watch the timer I have set here. But to give you a little bit of background on me personally, Minnesota STEM is basically the manifestation of a lifelong journey that I've been a recipient of many, many wonderful opportunities that you all are representing here through mentor relationships. Starting in corporate America at 17 years old, there is an organization out there called Inroads. Inroads is a African-American Black business. Really, it was historically known as a business top 10% major, where they would actually contract with a variety of large companies. And the individual had to go interview at the company to get the summer internship. And so I was very lucky, very blessed, and well prepared to be selected, whether I knew it or not. I can say that as an adult now, but going back, there was a lot of work that was poured into me by these volunteers and by these others to get me ready, to teach me how to dress for success, or at least know the differences on how you engage and what the expectations are. And over the years, it's very difficult for me sometimes to say this, but I do believe that I am an educator. I know it may sound totally bizarre. I never wanted to really accept it until, I was able to really roll my sleeves up and work with the Minnesota STEM Partnership and realize we all can teach others. But I was it's still an uncomfortable position for me to be in. I'd rather know that we're doing good for humanity, good for society, doing the right things for the right reasons. I happen to have technology experience. I happen to have managerial experience, supervisor experience, and leadership experience. All of these individual strands of experience allow me to work with our staff, work with the volunteers. But again, we are not a perfect organization, and we depend on organizations like yours, and as well as Cheryl. I think I saw Cheryl Moeller here. High Tech Kids, they're just an incredible organization that do so many things absolutely wonderfully correct. And not to disparage anybody that is here that I don't know, but I do really appreciate what Cheryl has done for our community as well. But the Minnesota STEM Partnership has many, many programs and many, many services. However, we're at a critical point in our organization where we are growing beyond our skin, or, we're growing up, we're maturing. We're entering into our 4th year of existence. We've learned a lot. We've went from me asking my wife if I could spend $5,000 and start, 3 or 5 robotics teams through Cheryl and High Tech Kids, to my wife saying yes, and to me realizing that I think I might have bitten off more than I could chew. So in essence, what we are those aunts and uncles that are family members, that are friends, that are do-gooders from the community, that bring together the students and then expose them to advancing and emerging technologies. Our primary focus isn't necessarily on just coding for coding purposes, but coding for a purpose. So if they have a robot, they want the robot to move a certain way, then we teach coding that gets them there. Obviously, we do teach standard coding classes and all of that as necessary, but our primary focuses are going to be part of the presentation that I'm going to share with you. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a background to know where I come from, where the organization started, and how we got to where we're at today. So in reverse order, today we have an office in North Minneapolis, right in the heart of North Minneapolis on Plymouth and Fremont. It has a full functional high school robotics field. It has a middle school FLL. For those of you familiar with the terminology, in middle school, we have a couple of tables with all the mission models. We have a VR, we have a PlayStation, we have a PC gaming environment. And for a fledgling organization, I have to say, I'm pretty proud of where we've gotten to. But as we've grown, and they are all first organization. Thank you, Cheryl. Keep it real for me, please. You can definitely do that. However, we also are looking to deepen our roots in the community. So we opened up space because we knew that we had to bring the technology closer to the kids. The issues and problems that we run across for BIPOC community, I should also have highlighted that we are focused predominantly on BIPOC students. as well as we have a focus in on gender focus, women in STEAM. We've done some adolescent to early, that 16 to 18-year-old programs for young boys that are at risk. And we don't differentiate across the gender spectrum except for those particular areas. Everybody is safe, everybody is welcome. Our volunteers come from all. We accept all and are accepting of anyone that's willing to serve the kids. And that's all we really care about is their passion, their skills, their willingness, their dependability, and all those other things that make up a great volunteer and great mentor. So without any additional fluff, I would say that we operate on a shoestring budget. We have a number of part-time staff. We have anywhere from 6 to 10, depending on what the need is. We participate in those competitions, the first Lego competitions. We also have our own where we partner with the city of St. Paul, as well as this spring, the city of Minneapolis. We don't really go into the public school districts. We are not in any way, shape, or form competitive with any of the other organizations. And I know when we first started, I was unaware of some of these differences and opportunities but we are able to grow and sustain what we currently have just through startup operations. So kids coming in from the street, from friends and family. But again, we're at that critical point where we're taking a little bit more than we can chew. And so I say all that to preface it with the breadth and the depth of the type of programs and services that we offer. So I'm going to share my screen, or at least I'm going to attempt to. So it won't let me share my screen, but it will allow me to share a PowerPoint. So we're going to see if this works. I did not test this before, so let me know if you can see this. You can see the PowerPoint. All right, let me see if I can actually fire it up. Maybe I can get it out of the way. Are you able to see the clean panel or the?
Yep.
We're good to go? All right.
Good to go.
All right, so got to do the blatant marketing there. Our programs are really designed around providing free, barrier-free, equitable access to advancing and emerging technologies. Our primary focuses are robotics, obviously. We do dabble in the AI space. Drones have been big for us in the past. We do some coding. Esports is really around the PC gaming towards workforce development, where it's esports, it's gaming, but it's everything that we do is basically tied to some type of IT technology, whether it be infrastructure, whatnot. And something that a lot of people don't know is that we also have an emphasis on clean energy. The building that we're in here in North Minneapolis, and I neglected to say we have a spot in St. Paul, but it's a fully solar enabled battery backup clean energy building with a water reclamation system for water parking lot, water runoff, and as well as more in the future. In this building, we actually will do some programming that you'll see to be pretty interesting, pretty beneficial. So kind of a little nugget is that the clean energy space.
And Michael, are you in the James Staples building?
Jamez Staples, yes. The Northgate, yep. The clean energy initiative. We are their anchor STEM provider, providing exploratory and introductory type programs for their workforce development program. And I'll share a little bit about that as well. So at a very high level, this is what we do. We have a huge emphasis on robotics and FIRST robotics. So we participate very heavily in the middle school and the high school, and we do have plans and intentions to go into another division that they have, which is a much larger, more expensive robot, but there is a need for us to evolve into that, as well as many other opportunities where we can inspire and gain interest from the students by doing pop-up events, day events, a couple of hour sessions where we'll pre-program the little smaller EV3 type robots with a sumo program or other programs and be able to let the students just build around them just to get them excited and interested in it. Our second area of focus, we kind of lumped it to try to consolidate a lot of things, but the whole AI, artificial intelligence, really is around the coding elements and the data elements. So you'll find us talk about AI, but one tangible output of that is there is, and I don't know if they're on here, but Code Savvy is doing a AI racing league. One of our goals was to create an artificial intelligence focus. And so through that, we're able to leverage another existing program, bring the students to the table, and be able to coach and teach them along that trajectory. So hopefully they'll be inspired by it. It's a little bit more advanced than the just a entry level, but it allows the students a variety. And what we're seeing with our students is there are a whole strata and strand of different levels of interest as well as experiences. We do have students that are definitely MIT bound, Stanford, all the, University of Minnesota advanced. And then we see a lot of students, just a normal standard distribution of where we think that their trajectory is. However, the amazing thing is you never want to underestimate these children, because we've had students come alive after 3 years. We have one young man, he happens to be Hmong. From day one, all he ever said was he wanted to be a software developer. He didn't even want to build on the FTC robot. This summer, we ran a FTC boot camp and he was on fire. He didn't realize that he could build. He'd love to do it. And although he said, well, I started because I just wanted to do it to see if I could do it. Now he's actually taking the robot home and brings it back on Saturday for his team. So you just never know, even out of the words of their own mouth, self-confession, it's amazing to watch those light bulbs pop up and move forward. And a lot of that is because they're in an environment where they feel safe. They're okay to make mistakes. We have incredible sponsors. For the sponsors that have purchased the equipment and, allowed us some ease on our budget to be able to make these things happen, we're able to then pay it forward. And the blessings there are students like Lucius and others are able to focus in and really raise to their highest level of possibility that they never would have possibly ever gained. Surrounding students are the volunteers, obviously, that make things happen. We have great people in each one of these categories that we'll talk about. Esports and virtual reality, really more on the esports side is, a combination of drones and PC gaming, and we do have some system gaming. We were bequeathed and donated a PS5, which the kids just love. So we use that as a carrot to hurry up and finish their robot build. But the key thing with esports is, and again, each one of these have some level of workforce development trajectory. Esports PC gaming is really important to us because we're able to bring technology professionals in and let the students upgrade their PCs, upgrade to new systems, understand what, for example, many of you might have tablets or iPads where it boots up, it's booting up off of memory or a solid state drive. It's not booting up of an old school hard drive like I grew up with, where it takes 5 minutes to boot your PC. Although I do have a PC that still takes 10 minutes to boot up, but that's a different conversation. So that as well as, and I'm gonna jump over to clean energy at the end, are really two of our trajectories for workforce development. Robotics is a natural, right? Because there's a thirst, and that is what the future is all about. But it's interesting to hear the students talk about clean energy and talk about when you really have a real conversation, they're worried about their future. They really are. You might see them not paying attention on TikTok, Instagram, whatever you name it, social media. But when you actually get them to converse at a level that is meaningful and real, there are a lot of concerns. And we oftentimes just broad brush it saying, oh, well, they don't really care about clean energy. There's people that are worried about air quality, water quality, right? All of these different sustainability issues. And it's pretty powerful when you actually get the students to talk, which we do. We've had many opportunities to do it. We actually ran a pitch competition where the students were supposed to take a combination of solar, robotics, and drones and create a solution for their neighborhood. Some of them did it immediately affecting their neighborhood, like taking a combination of a robot and a drone and putting these little pod fire stations throughout the community so you could get to a fire quicker and put out or at least do recon. all the way to saving. There's some type of fish, and I should have paid more attention, but there's a fish in the ocean, much like the carp problem that we had, but that is like eating up and taking away from the natural environment. So the students are thinking big and broad, and giving them this forum and this opportunity through the Minnesota STEM Partnership and many of the other organizations that you all may be a part of is absolutely critical. So I want to jump back then into this realm of professional development. This is one area of work that I will just say that we basically infuse in all of our programs. We do have a specific program called Power Up IT, and that's through, in part, from the Minnesota State IT Center of Excellence. And with that, we go into high schools that are predominantly a high percentage of minority students. And we bring in, through personal identity mapping, BIPOC technology speakers. So in essence, a speakers bureau for BIPOC people. We have other elements to this. We were running a show called the Altitude Show for a couple of years before COVID. But this one, we're bringing in the professionals and the practitioners that are doing these jobs so that the students can actually talk to them on a real basis and on a regular basis. Below that in purple is what we call our Minnesota STEM Partnership, or MSP Women in STEAM, where we have aligned ourselves with the NC WIT Aspirations in Computing program, simply because I believe it's an absolutely wonderful program. I've watched students get internships. I've watched students confidence grow, and these young female students in particular, where they don't oftentimes have an opportunity, like you said, to feel like they identify with anything. And our students, many of them start out with that early rising star, if you will. Give you one example. We had a young girl, her name was Armand. She was there to babysit her two younger siblings who were in the middle school robotics program on a Saturday. Amanita is our front registration and robotics coordinator. She walked her in so she could see what we were doing. Armand kind of shook her head and said no and walked away. And then she stood up, and I think Amanita said, go ahead and come on in. And next thing you know, she signed up for one of our girls' robotics teams. And here this young lady is in 9th grade, never even thought in her wildest dreams that she would even be on a robotics team, let alone walking into a STEM program. Literally, whether it be cultural or whatever, the ability for us to have the place and a space and a focus, having an all-girls team, which robotics in particular have been dominated. And Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong, but young white boys, little boys, and young men has been pretty much, the majority of the teams until, we're able to create some focus and expansion on BIPOC and gender-focused teams. So having said all that, that's why we exist. The other bottom part of this little STEAM fit is something that's evolving, kind of a personal story. It's really more of a trajectory based on Michael Wolff and his transformation to be able to lead a nonprofit and do it successfully. I recently lost a lot of weight, but I started to understand how important fitness was, nutrition, and if you will, mind, body, and soul, where proper sleep, proper hydration, and all these things will make you a better human being. But if you're going to enter into the work world, you also want to enter into it healthy, wealthy, and wise, right? As a whole person. So that is at a very high level what our programs are all about, and how we deliver them is through volunteers predominantly. We do have some staff that coordinates and make sure that the facility is ready, that we have the equipment, that we have food. Our two biggest gaps right now are transportation and really nutrition. I am heartbroken that we can only serve, the Little Caesars pizzas and food that I personally wouldn't eat. But we are working hard to get more indirect funding or non-dedicated funding so that we can actually make a more robust program to build out that whole STEAM fit. But I know in time that will happen. I do have videos for all these things, but in the essence of time, it's already 12:37. I want to make sure that we keep moving. Although we don't draw directly on this, and we are Mentor MN, right? And how important mentorship is. I do want to highlight two organizations that that I have a personal alignment with. One is BDPA. There is a national organization for Black data processing associates, and I'm exiting my second term as a national vice president for that. But programs like BDPA also are promoting mentoring. So they do a from the classroom to the boardroom as their tagline, where they actually are looking more at the business technology side of it, the data sciences, the collegiates. However, they have a chapter here in the Twin Cities, but there is actually a national affiliation, and we will be working with multiple organizations on a national level according to our strategic plan. So we're looking to not only impact students locally here in the Twin Cities, but as we get the funding and the ability to invest in proper process and procedures, we have a pretty strong template to do it much manually. However, we do know that there are opportunities, and we've been asked to help others build out the work. However, we do want to do it right. The other part of it, the other organization I want to highlight is the National Society of Black Engineers, or NSBE. We are also a NSBE junior chapter. So kindergarten through 12th is a brand new chapter that we started, and we're looking at recruiting heavily starting in January. Obviously, I think it was Emily maybe that indicated that October is a real busy time for STEM. And the lack of sleep and the dark circles under my eyes, yes, it is definitely a October harvest time here. However, we have wonderful programs, wonderful partnerships, wonderful relationships, and the opportunity to be able to proliferate STEM and or polarity around technology and engineering. The key thing about NSBE is really cool is because it's bringing in our M and our S. So it's bringing in the mathematics. We will have a math team, a math counts team. I don't know who governs that, but in the Twin Cities, I know that it exists. I know I've heard it. However, we will be having a NSBE math counts team, as well as other activities for the NSBE students participate in. And our alignment with the local professionals and the collegiates are pretty incredible. There's a NSBE chapter, collegiate chapter at the University of Minnesota, which we're already reaping the benefits of. So think about these collegiates mentoring these high school and middle school kids that is a whole nother level of engagement. And having an adult volunteer or mentor to actually facilitate those conversations, it's absolutely incredible. There's also one at the University of St. Thomas, and there may be another one potentially in either St. Cloud or Mankato. But however, saying that all really to say is that our goal is to allow anyone, our volunteers come from every ethnicity. We don't discriminate. We basically, the only thing that we discriminate against is if you don't love to give back to the kids, right? Or you don't follow through on your commitment. You say you're going to show up on Saturday, everybody's waiting for you to show up. We do love those types of volunteers that actually honor and commit and follow through, and they see everything through. So if I do any discrimination, it's really the diversity of thought and being able to make sure that the people that are doing these things are following through on their commitments. And I say that because our focus, really, we do want the students to be able to see themselves in others. But it's amazing again, too, and I don't want to leave any other stereotypes tainted, but at the end of the day, we all are human beings. Our kids break it down to the human experience. After they once see you, just like many of us, all they care about is, can they learn something from you? You know, potentially, do you have, any humor, an ounce of humor in your body? Do you know what's happening with the latest trends? They don't expect us to be their age or anything like that. They just want to have that respect relationship and be able to learn and grow and be able to pursue and attain those things that they eventually learn. And my last story, and I'm just going to fan through a couple of these things, two quick things is, The only pitch that we really have when we go out is looking for volunteers, because we know that volunteers are our heartbeat. Without volunteers, like many of the organizations, we won't survive. I don't think we're going to change that model. We would likely change the size and the scope of some of our programs before we change the model. We do know that we need funding to hire permanent or full-time trainers, or at least a couple of part-time trainers, so that we have the consistency, the experience to be able to deliver stronger, better services. And then the other key thing that we ask for with any sponsor, we may stray away from a sponsor if all they're looking to do is to slap their name on some pretty brown and black kids, right? Throw their logo on there. Every sponsor that we've dealt with are absolutely incredible. And I have had to walk away from a couple of money opportunities purely because it just didn't feel right. And it didn't work out anyway. So I hate to be that kind of cold or callous, but we really want to make sure that we get a genuine, true relationship and partnership with folks, or a deep collaboration, because at the end of the day, the students understand, the students know whether you're going to be genuine or true. And it's really us, right? All of us here are doing something good for our community, our individual communities, and the greater global community. But at the end of the day, we want to have our kids show up at these competitions, these incredible things that Cheryl and High Tech Kids are doing, Code Savvy, everything that is happening in this great Twin Cities community, to show up with dignity. And part of that really starts with the mentors and the ability for students to have a genuine and authentic engagement with these events and these activities. To go back, like I said, we're trying to do a lot of things. We're trying to do them right. We are going through that growth spurt, kind of like if anybody can think back to the Incredible Hulk, when they converted from David Banner to the Incredible Hulk, the clothes are getting really tight, right? The clothes are getting tight and about to rip. So we have to make sure that we have the ability to be sustainable and the ability to be able to provide an excellent experience for our students, so that they get, the same type of quality and equitable access across the board. So we are located in North Minneapolis, 2 blocks from Minneapolis North, a couple blocks from Franklin, Mura Field over a little bit far away, as well as the STEM corridor. We're also located in St. Paul near the Jimmy Lee, near St. Paul Central, basically, is a good landmark, which is Lexington and 94. And again, as we do these things and grow more expansive and have partnerships with Park and Rec, Boys and Girls Club, we're hoping to be able to reach a significant number of students over time. However, based on our ability to deliver and the infrastructure that we built, we want to make sure that it's sized right to be able to deliver and have something very quality for our students. Emily, Sarah, Allie, I think I'm at the end of the conversation here, almost right on the button, right? 12:45. So I'd open it up for any questions or concerns, criticisms, feedback.
No, you're great. And I could listen, you could, if you want a little side hustle, I think you could do some radio or podcast or something, because I think most folks on this call for sure would rather listen to your voice than mine. But no, I appreciate you so much, Michael, and the work that you do is not only inspiring, but I genuinely appreciate that you set the bar high, that you're intentional about, what funders you're partnering with. You're intentional about, the spaces that you're providing and that they're inclusive. And as you mentioned, and not only, out of the best interest of these young people, but you also know that these young people, young people have like a whole nother sense when it comes to being able to, I think, distinguish between being authentic and genuine and when folks are not. They just can smell BS from miles away. So I think I really appreciate how intentional you all are in really creating these spaces that not only spark interest and curiosity, but that they feel like they belong there. And I think even though I would love to see you be able to maybe get better funding for your food, but a lot of us are trying to think creatively on how do we get young people to these spaces, but that's just goes to show that you are creating spaces that those young people want to be. So congratulations to you on that and all you do. Again, I could have just listened to you for another hour, but I know, yeah, there's probably, if anyone has questions, I want to totally open the floor to anyone too. And I was going to mention Peg Thomas is on the call too. And I'm super excited to introduce Peg and Michael to each other too, because often you talk very in similar ways, and I'm excited for the work that you both do. So I'm happy that you're able to be in the same space today.
Well, hey, Peg.
Oh, good to meet you. Well, we can talk more offline, but I do know of Jamez Staples' building and vision and aspirations, and I'm so thrilled that you are literally, hooking up with him in that space. It's just a walk from North High. It's right there on Plymouth and 1200 Plymouth, and
Yeah.
it's a fabulous. I was just there 2 weeks ago talking to Michael and Jamez, and I was chatting that I have my daughter's beagle bones and raspberry pies that I've been trying to bequeath to somebody, and so yeah. I have a daughter, and I was saying on chat too, who went from South High liberal arts to Carnegie Mellon, pretty heavy duty engineering school, and now she's at Penn making robots the size of white blood cells, and she's right here in River City. She'd be a great Zoom opportunity for young women up there, I think.
Absolutely. We, here we're actually preparing to do a community base, but it's evolving actually to a high school program to do drone certifications as well
Yeah,
as
that's huge.
yeah, absolutely. And the other two areas, obviously he's well known for solar. He's doing a lot of the public schools of many projects throughout the Twin Cities. But the EV charging stations, I think, is pretty critical to our students' future, because one of our things we're going to do this past summer was to create a more or less a self-driving car using Raspberry Pi, right? Raspberry Pi 4, wrap it with a solar film, and then let the car just go until the motor's burnt out, just to see if it could continually run. We threw a little battery pack on it. So EV charging station is where I was actually going with that random comment, is in this building, they train young people and adults on solar panel build, installation, workforce development, right? And then the second piece of it is EV charging stations. And we know that the majority of the car manufacturer says by 2030, well, if you look at what a fifth grader is doing, wouldn't it be kind of cool to get them along that pathway now? And then obviously the drone is really big for programming. So they've asked us to coordinate a youth focused drone 107 certification, FAA certification program and testing. So we got some cool stuff coming up. So we're pretty excited. But being part of Jamez's initiative really makes all that happen. So.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, we should talk.
Michael, I just wanted to thank you. I'm with Mounds View Public Schools, and we have both Mounds View and Irondale High School. So I'm with one of the public school systems, and I know that we have teams that are working with Cheryl's organization. And of course, those teams are kind of outside of our curriculum and outside of our school-based programming. But what I was struck by today, and what I need constant reminding of, and Emily does that for me on a weekly basis through our other stuff, but the importance of even just centering mentoring around a common interest is as important, and something that I can do within the public school system for our students is if we're not, I'm not specifically working on the robotics stuff, but I certainly have a whole, group of students who may have an interest in IT and STEM related that I could partner with, caring adults in that IT area. So something that we're not currently doing within our system, and just kind of a reminder that that that's what mentoring is all about in you know, any kind of specific area of interest. So appreciate that kind of reminder. And Cheryl, we appreciate what you are doing for our kids as well. So.
And I guess only other, thank you very much, Mindy. It's nice, nice that that work is being done for sure. And I would concur with Cheryl. The one thing that I did learn across, 36 years in IT was I didn't realize it, but I was being mentored the whole way. You have mentors that are very deliberate, is very organized, and then you have regular check-ins, but they, the level of accountability, it's a two-way street, right? So, but I think I've been really blessed to have mentors that I never even knew exist, that they never even made it, known that they were helping and supporting me. And so what you all are doing here by enabling and making these types of things happen are actually critical. They're the heartbeat of making many of these grassroots initiatives happen, as well as larger scale. So I personally thank you. I thank you all for, listening and staying until the very end, but especially, Emily for reaching out, and to Sarah for running this cool program, and Ali for, all the work that you've done in helping getting us together here. But yeah, I'd be more than willing. I was sending it to Peg, then I realized I sent it to everybody, but should anyone want to connect, I'm certainly open. One of the key areas is our volunteer management, in essence, our mentoring wing. And we do have a staff member, part-time staff, that is exclusively looking at, how we're doing our building our process. And before, Emily, I even told her about you, off of her lips said, you need to really check out Mentor MN, literally. And I said, is she a mind reader or what?
Yeah.
So you are highly recommended. Janelle is my ace buku, as they say, my confidant. So she.
Well, what a compliment. I appreciate that, Michael. And you mentioned to me, I think when we were chatting offline, that it's kind of amazing and also incredible, the circles and, if you building these connections, because it takes all of us, I think. And as we know, we need to support and uplift each other as best we can, and so that we can continue to uplift and support the young people. Yeah, I mean, I'm so honored that you've been here, Michael, and I'm thrilled that you're still, you jumped in, Peg and Mindy and Cheryl, that you're here. I know you do need to bounce out really quick, Michael, but there was a question that, what are the largest challenges in recruiting students? So are there jobs, some of your competition in recruiting kids, or are there other activities? How can you get more?
And can I just add something to that, Michael, as a nice wrap up, which is what are some challenges, and then how can mentoring programs, corporate partners, how can we all support your work and further the mission of the work that you're doing?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, Cheryl, as you know well, we do run into, so if you look at the journey or the evolution of Minnesota STEM, we started out with, I'll use the term friends and family, known entities, churches, community centers, just, friends and family, if you will. And those students participated because they had the time and they didn't have a lot of the conflicts. But we get into year 2 and year 3, as we recruit and become more well-known and delivering, what we are delivering, there are a lot of conflicts. We've had some students that, if I could shake the parent, I would say, look, they don't need to go to basketball. Your kid is extremely talented in coding or robotics or has this fascination. I can tell you firsthand, an incredible student that just has a bright future STEM career, and the parent wants them to do basketball. Yes, a student, they're doing it because they are gifted, but we run into all types of barriers. But I do believe in the longer term play is as we can be resilient and persistent in recruiting, and not just because they said no this session doesn't mean they're going to say no next session. And if we can get our branding and get our communication down, I think over time, I think they'll come to the realization that we don't want these students showing up in 12th grade and then having to go back and wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda. So that is we do run into a lot of barriers. One of the other barriers we run into is, you know, it gets to be PSAT and ACT and testing seasons, right? So a lot of the students go to boot camps or weekend sessions. So we have a lot of students that are very active, like many, we'll call them the traditional middle school or middle class family. However, the reason why we're here in North Minneapolis is we're door knocking, we're standing out in front, we're talking to the kids that they're walking with their parents, and they're the ones who are now showing up. So we're actually maturing into an area where we are actually engaging with the students from this community that don't have all these activities, right? They might be doing nothing on a Saturday morning, watching cartoons or whatever, you know, kids do. So yes, Cheryl, we do have some challenges. Hopefully I answered that. And
Yeah, I
then,
guess I was wondering too, like, I've heard from other nonprofits that they've started offering stipends to students to participate, because if a low income family has a choice between a job at McDonald's that would help their family or doing an enrichment activity, they might choose the job or more so than the enrichment activity. And so some nonprofits have tried paying stipends to students because their parents see it as they've been recruited to participate in that. And I don't know if that's something you've run across yet.
yes, I have an opinion. Through BDPA, one of our chapters in Indianapolis ran a stipend program just to get the kids to show up at a coding class. All those kids are middle class. They are only taking the money because they gave up golf or gave up basketball or gave up something else. I believe that in the long run, that the students will eventually emerge and participate voluntarily. I would, in one of our NSF grant models, we are going to put in a stipend-based model, a small stipend, just to test it. It'll be, obviously NSF is research. However, we haven't done the level of research necessary to see how stipend programs work. But yeah, Cheryl, to answer that question, I think we may toy with that. I'm not a big believer in it, but I believe that if we can reach, there is a lot of students that just don't know or are afraid, or that whole, getting back to the whole STEM identity thing. You know, I'm coming from a situation where we've had students not turn in A papers because of peer pressure. And then they couldn't, you know, these are students that probably could have ran a high 3s or 4.0, but because it isn't cool to turn in good work. So we're trying to make nerdy cool, try to change that whole mindset, you know, amongst a very difficult, you know, a challenge. So I don't zero out anything, but the stipend thing bothers Michael personally a little bit because I want people vested in this. But I do believe that we haven't run into the McDonald's type thing. Upper class, middle class, we've run into where, hey, you know, it's COVID, I finally get to hang out with my friends and they'd rather work on a Saturday, right? It's a more fun thing. But I have not yet run into that. It's been more parental misdirection, for lack of my opinion, parental lack of knowledge of them even thinking their kids have a STEM identity because they're working 3 jobs, right? Or whatever. So.
Yeah,
But
no,
I
that
haven't.
makes sense. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I know, Michael, that you have an urgent or important thing to get to too.
I'm
And
watching,
again, but
I'm watching them come in the door, so you're.
Oh, okay. Very much appreciate your time today and all of you that have been on this call and being part of this conversation. We appreciate each and every one of you. And again, we hope to connect soon, and I'll send out some more resources and tools following this today.